A while ago I made a video suggesting that you should give The Last of Us show a chance.
Now, is this the single worst piece of art in history? Absolutely not. Is it the best piece of art in history? Yes. Yes, it is.
If you didn't, sucks to be you. Usually when a show adapts a video game, it's garbage, it's trash.
What the hell is this?
Am I a criminal? I don't think so. Everyone needs a job, right? We all need a payday.
It's either too far from the source material or too close to it. HBO's The Last of Us manages to find the middle ground perfectly. It covers the entirety of The Last of Us Part 1 in just 9 episodes, which I thank God for. I honestly did not expect the story to move so fast and thought that there's a very high chance they're gonna milk this story dry. But they didn't. The series purposely implements changes into the storyline to not become an exact replica of the game, while still keeping the core elements of it. Some of the scenes are literal counterparts of the game, with the exact same acts and dialogues. Let me make it simple. Have you ever tried rewatching a movie from years ago? You have a vague memory of bullet points in the story, but you can't really remember what happens between them. That's exactly what watching HBO's The Last of Us feels like.
Something terrible is gonna happen!
I'm afraid it already has, sir.
Basically, no part of the story experience from the original is missing, but twists and turns have been made. You're gonna have moments like, oh, I remember this, and oh, I don't remember this. Disclaimer, disclaimer. You may also have moments that are just like, what the fuck? So in a weird way, you both know and don't know what's gonna happen next. Movies and series don't have a crucial element when they're compared to video games. Interactivity. The fact that you get to control that character on the screen makes it so much easier for the player to connect with the characters and invest in the story. Sometimes too much. Interactivity is one of the reasons so many games are loved by the players. Take a game like Resident Evil. The story is just there to progress the game forward. I don't think it took that long to write a villain like Wesker. The real reason anyone would pay for any Resident Evil game has always been the gameplay, not the story. And when there's a movie made out of it which doesn't have interactivity.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
To be honest, I don't think not having interactivity is the only problem with Resident Evil movies. The Last of Us, on the other hand, acknowledges that the combat nature of the game has made a lot of people turn their heads towards it. So, while keeping them in, the show makes the action more realistic. You would see Joel taking on 3 to 4 guys max, and sometimes not even all by himself.
Help me! I'm not gonna make it! I'm not gonna make it! Help me! I'm not gonna make it! Much appreciated.
But you will never see him take on 20 armed men like he does in the game. That's because video games revolving around an apocalypse scenario usually don't have a problem with pushing the suspension of disbelief, while TV shows do. Keeping the world as realistic as possible in a show helps it connect to the audience so much better and is the correct choice. But if you don't vibe with it and prefer Joel to take on an entire army by himself, the game exists. You can just go and play it. Additionally, while the combat intensity is reduced, you don't see as much of it as you would in the game either. You would never find a long battle montage of Joel and Ellie having a shootout with scavengers, and when you do get some, it always serves a purpose to the plot, which is necessary for a show, but not for a game. In video games, usually when you fight a bunch of enemies before reaching your destination, you don't question it. They're NPCs stopping you from finishing the level. It happens all the time. The game wouldn't have any challenge if these enemies didn't exist. exist. It'd turn into a PlayStation exclusive. You can just put the controller aside and watch. But in a show, if you have your protagonist fight a bunch of enemies with absolutely no bearing on the story, no character development or introduction, no plot progression, it serves no purpose. There's no reason for it to happen in the first place. Lucky for you, Ellie fanboys. Ew, what the hell? The show is very well aware. With the combat reduced and most of the gameplay centered sections that were originally used for scavenging removed, the show had this giant empty hole between the bullet points to fill. So the writers used this chance to expand on the main characters, Ellie and Joel, and side characters that we didn't see much of in the actual game, like Tess, Bill, Henry, Sam, and Tommy. We have entire episodes covering the backstories of these characters, which spawned a problem I have with the show. No matter how good these backstories are written, they serve little to no purpose to the main plotline of Joel and Ellie. Episode 3, for example, covers the entire backstory of Bill from the beginning of the apocalypse, but it contributes nothing to Joel and Ellie's journey. Or the 7th episode, where the entire Left Behind DLC is covered through flashbacks while Ellie is taking care of Joel. It's nice to get a bit of a backstory on Ellie, but it contributes nothing to the ongoing crisis. I thought that maybe Ellie is going to do something she learned from her days with Riley, but no, that didn't happen. We just got an entire episode of Ellie learning to become the breadwinner with irrelevant flashbacks of a time in her past. Someone who played the game would remember these characters and understand why it's interesting to learn their past. But someone who watches the show only, they're gonna go through these episodes and say, okay, so what? They won't really get the point of learning about the past of a side character and the lore of a main character, which is irrelevant to the current situation, especially in so much depth. I'm pretty sure these backstories were only put in to get that fanboy boner up, but I could personally gloss over it. In my opinion, even if it doesn't serve the main plotline, it can help with the world building. But which side you stand on this personally comes down to your own personal taste. You can find signs of love in every corner of the show. The writing, the atmosphere, the CGI, the practical effects. It's obvious that the team behind the show genuinely cared about what they were making and didn't just slap together a bunch of episodes as promotional material. In order to paint this brilliant image, they had to make some choices that sent a whole bunch of people on a literal Hotline Miami killing streak. The most controversial choice out of all was the cast. Anyone who followed the news regarding the show remembers how much everyone hated Pedro Pascal as Joel and even more Bella Ramsey as Ellie. And as ridiculous as it seems, it wasn't because of their acting, no, that would be far too intelligent for an average Reddit user. It was because they didn't look like the original characters. I shit you not, I read multiple times that Bella Ramsey's performance as Ellie was terrible because she's ugly. How low should you be in your life to bully a child that is infinitely more successful than you will ever be because her appearance isn't up to your personal beauty standards? And the reasoning, it's so stupid, the reasoning behind it being that her performance, pay attention, performance, it comes down to acting, wasn't good because her appearance that has nothing to do with the performance and acting wasn't up to your standards. You know how you buy a baby a toy that doesn't really look like what they had in mind, so they just go, oh, now I don't want it, wah, wah, wah. This is exactly how I view these people. Like I said in my previous video on the topic, this isn't a cosplay con, it's a movie set. When it comes to casting for a role, a director's priority is performance, not appearance. Actors are supposed to convey the feeling of characters to the viewer the best they can. All of you can recall the controversy surrounding Zendaya as MJ. Whether her performance as the character was good or not comes down to your opinion. I am not going to touch that topic. But we can all agree that her appearance was not the priority when she was casted. When we think of a character, our priority must be their traits. Joel is arrogant, aggressive, and depressed. So when I remember Joel, I remember these traits. I don't just envision an old man and say, yeah, that's Joel. Don't get me wrong, appearance is important. And that appearance has been taken into the account. Because Bella and Pedro do have their similarities with Ellie and Joel. But the execution execution of a character's behavior is so much more impactful on the show than an actor being similar looking to the original character. If you have watched the show to this point and still hate Bella and Pedro as Ellie and Joel, your opinion is simply your personal taste. Do not try to portray it as a fact. So far, despite the twists and turns of the show, all of the crucial scenes are counterparts of the first part of the game. Given that the show is expected to cover part 2 of the game as well, we are left with the question of will the crucial plot points of part 2 also be kept in? Because it's a known fact that The Last of Us Part 2 is a seriously controversial title. If you can think of an opinion about this game, chances are it has already been said. And if the show follows the game precisely, it will just be another actress that receives death threats for performing as a character and another controversial title on the hands of Sony. Which has its negatives. A lot of people will be pushed away from the show just like they were from the game, but also its positives. Controversy will always keep people talking, and ultimately it extends the lifespan of your product. The show has walked a pretty good path so far, but whether it keeps this up comes down to the decisions of Sony, which have proven to make some pretty bad decisions before. All us fans can do is to pray this doesn't turn into a dumpster fire, sit back and observe.